Welcome, everybody. Today, I am delighted to be speaking with author Lynne Bowman. Lynne has had a wonderfully varied career. She's worked in marketing and advertising for many years, from what I can gather from her information, and she's worked across different industries in that profession. She's also worked a lot in the entertainment industry as an actress, a makeup artist, a screenwriter, and a journalist. More than 30 years ago, though, Lynne was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and she is living proof that you can cook, eat, sleep, and walk your way out of this disease and other chronic conditions. Lynne's new book, Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them, is a cool, fun, beautiful guidebook for anybody who wants to eat healthy. And I can't wait to hear about that brownie recipe, Lynne. But let's start with, if you can tell us a bit about you, about your background, about your why you doing the work that you're doing now. But I'd love to, hear the story for the audience about Lynne.
Well, I have to start with the fact that I'm really old because I love that. I wanted to get old. I didn't want to check out early. And I plan on I'm 76 now, and I'm hoping for another 25 or 30 years or whatever of good life. And that's what I want for everybody. And the why of it, I think, Arwen, goes way back. My mother had a chronic disease, and she died when I was 18. So I started my life really as a young adult with this deep understanding of what a chronic disease does to a family, and not only to an individual, but your children, your friends, your husband, your everything. I pretty much lost everything when she died. My dog, the house, my dad started another life. My older siblings were gone. So in that brief period of time, my whole life changed. And that kind of became the way those things do, determined the way so much of the rest of my life went. I wanted to have children too, and a home. But it was sort of a frightening prospect for me. But as time went on, I'm going to skip some of the details, but we can go back to those later if you want. But I found myself happily, the mother of 3 small ones that were very close in age, but in a marriage that had to end. And it was abusive and difficult. He was a vet. That's a whole other story, that had come back from Vietnam and was damaged and suffering from it. And so to make sure that I survived and my kids did, I ran with them and started a new life back in California, where I had been born. And so my resume is this funny kind of, patchwork of things, because I was on the West Coast and I was on the East Coast and I was back on the West Coast. But I landed in Silicon Valley in 1980, then single mom with these 3 little kids. And I needed to make a living because I was the sole support of my kids. So when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, my determination was I was going to do whatever I had to do to survive it and to be there for my kids. It was like the idea that maybe I would be gone or not able to, was just, no, we're not doing that. Whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. And so I tried hard to educate myself about the food. And in those days, all they would tell you about type 2 diabetes was pretty much, well, watch your carbs and you should lose some weight. Even though you're not really particularly overweight, it's good to lose some weight. And watch your carbs, no sugar, try not to eat sugar. And so, and I took the classes that were offered when they were offered, and I read whatever book, but I was not convinced that any of it was really good information. And so time went on. I managed to keep myself in reasonable control. My blood glucose was in reasonable range. Mm-hmm. And I didn't test all the time or anything, but I was active and, I ate well. But I learned in the process of making this kind of stumbling around exploration of it that, and I was always a cook. I mean, I knew how to get a meal on the table fast, but I learned how to do it in a pretty healthy way. And of course, the crazy thing about this is that I was just stumbling upon and discovering the same way of eating that everybody should be eating. The secret is, and I hope it's not going to be a secret after a while, if you have heart disease, if you have other chronic problems, if you are suffering from inflammation, I mean, the list is a mile long. The answer is eat whole food.
Yep.
Plant-based.
Yep.
Not too much. But if you're eating whole food, plant-based, it's almost impossible to eat too much.
Yes.
Because you're not eating big food, packaged food. And in America, and I don't know if Australia is as bad, but I think our diets are very similar.
Yes, they are.
Every bit of packaged food that you eat has a ton of sugar and salt in it. And there's nothing wrong with salt. I sprinkle salt on everything that I eat, but the amount of salt that's in packaged foods is unhealthy. It's tremendous. It's large. It's big. So it's just a matter of being suspicious of anything in a bag or a box, anything with a label of ingredients. If there's more than 3 ingredients, I'm like, okay, what's in that? And this is not real news to people. I think most people have a concept of this or have heard about this or know that, but making the step to actually doing it is the big stumbling block, is that you have to cook. You have to go in the kitchen. You have to start with good, fresh ingredients, whole food, plant-based food. Doesn't come in a box. It comes at the farmer's market or in a community service agriculture basket or in your own garden. It's an actual orange or peach or head of lettuce. It's not in a box or a bag. And big one, it's not in a drive-through restaurant.
Yep.
And in the United States now, that's how people are feeding their kids, because the moms and dads are absolutely nuts driving the little guys to French lessons and piano and choir and Mandarin and baseball and soccer and everything. And so I think as a culture, I mean, we encompass many cultures, but what we have in common is that we have given up our life at the table. We no longer have the table culture that was so much a part of our lives until the 50s. And then after World War II, the 50s, moms were so thrilled that they could just go to the store and buy stuff, the Campbell's soup in a can and the box of cereal and stuff. And that's how, and again, I'm in my 70s. And so people my age, that's how we were brought up. I ate Wonder Bread, white bread, and bologna sandwiches every day, for years. And we ate the Wheaties in the cereal box. And so we're just now seeing this big resurgence, I think, of interest in real food. And part of it is because in addition to something like 88% of us having, I've seen statistics that go from 85 to 98, but huge number of us, overwhelming number of us have chronic disease now. And the implications of that are not only we're going to die and we're going to suffer, but economically, it's a mess. The healthcare expenses in the US, it takes people down. Huge number. And the last number I saw on that was that 85% of the bankruptcies in the United States are health related.
Wow.
Doesn't surprise me at all. But people kind of don't make that connection that it's your health really truly is your wealth. And without your health, you are at risk of losing everything you may already have.
Yeah.
Or never acquiring what you feel you need. So, and we were talking earlier on about how it's all connected, because the other thing is that if you're eating out of a box or eating beef, let's say, from the grocery store, you are contributing in a major way to the pollution that is going to kill us all. Here I'm Granny Buzzkill today, and I'm sorry about that. But I think if you're a sentient human being, by now you've heard the message that we have a problem with the atmosphere, with pollution, with losing our trees, with grinding up all of our topsoil and having it go out into the universe. And that all comes back to the kitchen table. It all comes back to what we're eating or not eating.
So is that what I saw you had a phrase about kitchen table culture?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So would you say anything more about that other than what you've said about what you mean?
I love talking about it because I think it's where we learn the most important things in our life that we learn. And I may be speaking here only from the perspective of my generation or the generation behind me. I can speak for my kids and I and myself. I was the youngest, so I could hardly get a word in edgewise at my table at home. And of course, my dad was king of the universe. And so we listened to him. But I got this kind of graduate education in marketing at my dinner table every night, which at the time I'm going, oh, I wish you, but that's how valuable is that? I mean, I went out into the world having listened to my dad, and of course my mom would pitch in from time to time, but he was a management consultant. And so that's what he talked about. And that's what I learned. But I also learned how to argue, how to defend myself, how to eat with a knife and fork and a spoon, and where things went on a table. I learned how to share food, how to pass food around a table. I mean, think about all the things that are a result of just sitting down properly at a table. Where do you put your napkin? You know, what is your napkin? Is it paper? Is it cloth? Whatever. What are the implements that are on the table? And we have a generation of kids now, Arwen, who have never used utensils because they have, it's true. There are a ton of kids who have eaten from a bag takeout food. They've eaten chicken bits, hamburgers, pizzas, fish thingies. That's all they've eaten because mom was too busy. This was a way, the families have outsourced their food to Colonel Sanders, or Mickey D. And yeah, it's yummy, but none of it is good for you. I mean, it's really, I'm sorry, it's really awful food.
Yeah.
It's fried. It's
not even food a lot of the time, is it? Really?
Not even food. And the animals that are crunched up in the chicken thingies and the hamburgers, if you really thought at all about the lives or lack of lives that those critters have had, or the people who process them, the people who are processing the chicken. So it's not just the chickens that are suffering and the dirt that's the runoff from the chicken farm in quotes, chicken factory, and the people who are being treated badly, who are making that chicken as cheap as it needs to be I mean, the whole business needs to go, needs to be rethought, needs to be upgraded, or whatever we want to call it. But my answer, Granny here, it's like, come on into my kitchen and sit down. And so the cookbook that I did is because I know it needs to be fast. I know it needs to be simple. I raised 3 kids by myself, but we sat at the table at least once a day, typically for supper. I arranged my life that way, especially even though it was not easy. I know it's not easy, but also I want parents to think about what they're giving up when they're doing one more martial arts class or soccer or whatever. Is that really more important than knowing how to be at a table with your family? Knowing what your mom thinks about stuff, knowing what your big sister thinks about stuff, knowing how to have that conversation. There are so many young people now who are not comfortable initiating a conversation or carrying on. And I find this really shocking, but because, I'm old and crusty, but, and my mom was articulate. And so, we had a situation where she spoke and my brother and sister were always arguing. I think that whatever your family is, all of you deserve to know each other. I mean,
you're stuck with each other anyway. You might as well get to know.
Yeah. And I mean, do you really want your kids going off to university or wherever they're going to go without that background, without knowing how to sit at a table and have a conversation and appreciate their food and know what their food is and value their food and understand where the food came from? I think that's such an essential life skill.
I totally agree. And it's something I've always, it's always been, a given in my household as well, that and like you, it's probably only for, I would call it dinner, our meal at the end of the day, where we all sit down together. But occasionally if we're all around at other times as well. But I agree, it's just so important to have that ritual, because there are so many benefits that you get from doing that.
I think so.
People have just abandoned, haven't they? So, I mean, I think a lot of it as well is about, I agree that parents are running kids around to so many activities, and that doesn't help. And I totally agree with you, it's probably too many activities a lot of the time. And I also think, there's a lot of the problem comes from women being the ones who do most of this work on top of their paid work.
Yep. And the housework.
And the housework, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, they're doing still the bulk of it, and data shows us that that's the case. And it's about rethinking how all of that works. But that is not for this podcast. That is a very big topic.
It's huge.
Yeah. But it's just a massive problem with how our society runs, and we've just got to learn to slow down as well. Like, it shouldn't be, going from this to that to the other thing for the 4 hours after school every day. It's just about being still and being together and appreciating everything about that and the food that we're eating. So
it's also, I think it's about joy.
Yeah.
I would love to think that people can really bring joy to the table with them, can have a joyful time at the table and a joyful relationship with food. In the health business, we talk a lot about our relationship with food, and when that breaks down for some reason or other, I don't like the thought that some people really suffer with their relationship with food, that food is dangerous and difficult and threatening in some way. I think that's true in many cases. So I know what I write and what I produce is about making it simple and joyful. If there's a way to do that, that's what I want for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your, you kind of briefly mentioned that, you know, you did all the things that you could possibly do to help yourself overcome the diabetes type 2 diagnosis. Can you just give us a bit more detail about that? I mean, you said you were active and
well, I will. And
yeah.
the thing is that back in the day, they would say this is a progressive disease. It's a chronic disease that is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Okay, which who wants to hear that message, right? And so I think part of me just went, no, I'm not doing it. But in fact, what's happened, and a turning point for me, Arwen, was in 2019. I went to a conference, the Plantricians Conference, and these were medical doctors from all over the world who were kind of outliers in their field because they believed in healing with food. Mm-hmm. And these were people, the names you will know, T. Colin Campbell, big name in nutrition history, and Dean Ornish, who has been out there for a long time, reversing heart disease, and no one believed he was doing it or could do it. So there was this gathering that was not too far from me, and I went, I'm just going to go to that. I really need to go to that. And I had my book about half started, and I thought, I'm going to see if any of these folks would agree that this was a tool that they might use in their practice. So I went to this conference, which, and it was at a big, conference center, and for 8 hours a day, well, more than that, because it was from 8 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, the PowerPoints, more data and more data and slides and overwhelming science-based evidence that we know how not to have heart disease, and we know what really causes diabetes. And it wasn't what I thought. I had been eating a diet that was almost entirely meat and vegetables for years. And now these guys are saying, it's the meat. It's the meat. It's the fat in the meat that is actually interfering with metabolizing the glucose in your body. And so, of course, I sat there and listened to this and went, wait, what? Because it was so not what I had been hearing and reading for so many years. And what I had been doing was partially good because I wasn't eating a lot of crap, and, I was eating a lot of vegetables and so on, but I was also eating a lot of meat. And like everyone, I had always heard that, chicken breast, not too fatty, and so on. Well, according to these guys, the worst thing you could possibly eat was chicken. The most tainted meat on the market was chicken. And they had all the receipts. They explained all of it and showed the pictures and talked about the kids that they were doing surgery on who had plaque in their veins at the age of 8 and 10, so on. So it was mind-blowing for me to hear and see all this. And these were highly reputable people, surgeons, practitioners of all different kinds from all over. This wasn't like 3 quacky guys from Detroit. This was a really reputable, august bunch of people. So, and by the way, and the food they were serving was vegetarian, vegan. And I kept thinking, boy, this is not great food. It's really not the best I've ever had. They could do much better here. So when we finished and I got in the car, my husband came and picked me up. I said, guess what? I'm a vegan now. And the car went kind of quiet for a while. But after a while, he said, okay, I'm in. And so we ran an experiment in our home with my one subject, who's cooperative always. With my husband, that's 2. He's pretty good about it. But I had just had my blood work done. And so for 6 months, I did not eat 1 bite of meat, no animal food at all, no cheese. I went vegan completely. And I didn't throw out my leather shoes, but food-wise, I was completely a vegan.
Yeah.
And at the end of 6 months, I got my blood work done. And my physician, same one I'd had for a long time, said, wow, my hemoglobin A1C, and if any of you don't know what that is, you need to find out, because it's a test that everybody needs to take when they're 40 or so, to get a baseline for where your blood glucose is. It's an average over a period of 3 months, and it's a pretty reliable test, and it's important to know that. And if your number's good, great, don't worry about it for a while. If your number's not too good, then you know you need to start watching and being more careful than you're being. So my hemoglobin A1C had dropped 3 points. And she said, my physician said, you know, Lynn, in women your age, that just doesn't happen.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, okay, well, it just did. Ha, you know. So by now, my hemoglobin A1C is down a full 10 points.
Wow.
From what and it was not bad to begin with, for an old lady diabetic. And so that's exciting. It's exciting to think that not only can people like me reverse their numbers, and I mean, I'm bumping right down on normal, not diabetic range now, after having been in diabetic range since my 40s. So if you believe me, there's evidence right there. I mean, it's a party of one, but I'm not the only one. There are lots of people out there who are getting these kinds of results from eating good food, from moving. And I work out 3 times a week. And I do TRX, and I do Pilates, and a little gym up the street with my girlfriend. So it's really fun. It's social, which is another aspect of this that's important.
Yeah.
I have a little treadmill that I can do some cardio on, and I have a big garden and so on. So I'm active up and down the stairs. Very important. But you have to eat well, and you have to eat whole food. And you can't eat, if you want to eat meat, you can eat meat, but only truly grass-fed and finished meat, because it's a whole different animal, literally, than a farm, factory farm raised cow or pig. I think what happens is you really stop wanting meat. Your body people always ask me about the sugar thing. Don't you crave sugar? And the answer is no, I don't. Because when you quit sugar, your body chemistry changes, and your saliva, actually, the composition of your saliva changes, and your taste changes. So you truly, and I know this is hard to believe if you're chomping on, cookies and eating ice cream at night, but you really do get to the place pretty quickly where you don't want it anymore. And no one can be more surprised than me that I stopped wanting meat. I was a huge meat eater, and it just doesn't sound good anymore. It doesn't smell good anymore. I do eat some salmon, some fish, some shrimp.
And are you totally vegan still? Like, do you use, butter or whatever? Or
well, that's what I do eat some fish. So I'm pescatarian, or whatever you call it. Salmon is particularly, the fatty fish are really important nutritionally because of the vitamin D.
Yeah.
But that's what I crave. That's what sounds good to me and tastes good to me. And I have a way of preparing it. It's in the book. That's simple. It's not messy. And you don't add fat to it.
Yeah.
So yes, I use vegan butter. There's some wonderful products out there now that are plant-based, and they're more all the time. All kinds of really good substitutes. I talk in the book, I keep waving at it, it's behind me, but I talk in the book about sugar substitutes, because I think sugar is a difficult issue for a lot of people, and people don't know how great food can be because we're kind of going on old information. There have been some sugar substitutes out on the market in years past that were like, aspartame, and then the news comes out like, no, it's bad. And so everybody kind of has this bad feeling about them. But there are foods like monk fruit, which is a whole food. It's a great sweetener. Chicory root, whole food, great sweetener. Allulose, it's slightly processed from, actually, I think they make it from sugar cane, but it's a no calorie sweetener that doesn't spike your blood glucose. Tastes great. And people still, when you put a sign on something and it says sugar-free, the typical reaction is, oh, no, thank you. Like, really? Ew. But I promise you, and I wish I could just hand you one of my brownies. They're made, Arwen, with pumpkin.
Yep.
Which in Australia, y'all like your pumpkin like we do here.
Yep.
They're made with I just use canned pumpkin typically, and also nut butter. I use an almond butter. You can use a different kind of nut butter, but almond butter works great.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination of almond butter and pumpkin means you don't need any flour and you don't need any oil.
Oh, wow.
It's whole food. And what else is in it? Cocoa, just whole cocoa with nothing in it. And then I sweeten it with one of my preferred sweeteners, whatever I've got in stock at the time. And some baking soda and what else? Hardly anything. It's simple. One bowl, put it in the oven, and you got brownies. Wow. And they're absolutely delicious. And then I put a frosting on it that we have. Do you have Trader Joe's where you are? Well, I use a candy bar that I get from Trader Joe's. You can find equivalents, I'm sure. It's a good dark chocolate candy bar that is sweetened with, this one is maltitol, which some people, you just have to watch the amount of it that you eat, the sugar alcohols, which are non-caloric. And I melt it. I put a little bit of soy milk in with it, and it makes a beautiful frosting, glossy and pretty. And I put it on the brownies. Nothing could be simpler. It's so easy. And if you don't tell people, they will never know that it's good food, healthy food, sugar-free. Oh, and eggs. And I use eggs. You can certainly use egg substitutes, which are usually made out of flax seed, and they work fine. But I do eat eggs, and I think eggs are actually, if you know the chicken's name, if you know where the chicken came from, if you know that chicken is healthy and happy and eating worms and grass and things, and the yolk is that gorgeous deep orange yellow that healthy eggs are really good food. Yep. And if you're strictly vegan, okay, that's okay. You don't need to eat them. But if your issue is health, eggs are a really great food. There's nothing wrong with them if they are not factory farmed, if they're good backyard or neighborhood eggs, they're fine.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for any animal products where to me, one of the main things is that the animals are treated well and that they're living as nature intended for them. And I think our factory farming thing with meat here, I'm not sure that it's quite as bad as the US, but it's still bad. So I mean, I will only buy organic biodynamic meat now. And I'm like you as well, that I don't, so I share care of my boys with their dad, and when they're not with me, I don't eat meat really, because I don't need it. I don't particularly want it. Yeah, I don't. And
Keeps your kitchen cleaner too.
Yeah, it does. It does, absolutely.
Your house smells better.
Yeah, yep, so true. But yeah, but with teenage boys, they do like their meat, and I know that yep, they can, and they were both very into their sport. And so my older one, as we talked about before, is living overseas, so I don't have to worry about him feeding him at the moment. But my younger one is extremely athletic, does hours and hours of sport every day, and you know, it's easier to get the iron and a number of other nutrients that you need if you're eating meat. So he does want to eat meat, and that's fine. I'm happy to eat some meat with him, but I don't need it, and I only buy really good.
Interesting too to see that there are so many athletes now, you know, elite athletes at the very top of their sport, who are proving to everyone that the old saw about needing steak and needing meat, it's not true. These guys and gals are beating the meat eaters. Their performance, they are outperforming the people who eat meat. And we don't need to go into all the chemical reasons why, but anyone who feels like they would be jeopardizing their strength by not eating meat is just, there's no evidence of that at all. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence of the opposite, that you are doing some damage long term if you are eating a lot of meat regularly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was that Game Changers. Yeah.
And then people came out and wanted to debunk it and everything, but they're now, you know, with every month that goes by, new stuff bubbles out because people are kind of getting it. They're understanding that as a civilization, if we can still call ourselves that, I'm not sure some days, but you know, human beings do great on a diet of whole plant-based foods. And not only that, but the earth does way better when we eat that way. And we need to start thinking about that seriously. If anyone is listening to this who doesn't yet think about that, you really have to include it in your formula. I mean, it's important. It's extremely important.
We are not going to have a planet that humans can survive on for much longer if we don't turn that around now. So just in case anybody out there is not clear on what you mean when you say whole foods, can you give us your words around that?
I will. Okay, how do I define whole foods? It's food that comes to you in the form that it was created by nature. So an apple is a whole food, a strawberry, some rhubarb. do you do rhubarb in Australia? Yeah. I love it. The pink vegetable, I call it celery and drag. And it, you know, no calories, no, it's so yummy, so good. And free usually. I mean, it just grows like a weed once you get it going. It's fantastic. So that's a whole food, something that grows naturally out of the dirt. And of course, animal foods can be whole foods too, if they come to you in their natural state without being mixed or aged or anything. And so the difference there would be that, for example, a processed salami is not a whole food. And in fact, the processed meats like salami and pepperoni, the preserved meats, if you don't know this, I'm telling you now, they really are implicated in cancer. There's no question now that these meats contain carcinogens and are going to cause you a problem over time. So the difference is that an animal can be whole food if you haven't aged it or mixed it up with stuff or processed it. But essentially, it's anything in a bag or a box with a list of ingredients on it is not whole food.
Yeah.
So if you make your own granola cereal, for example, I give you the recipe, it's great, out of whole oats and whole pieces of fruit that you cut up or that you dry or that someone you know has dried. Nuts are whole food. And I don't think it's that hard to kind of get the formula. A nut is a nut, an oat is an oat. It's when you have something in a box that you read the ingredients and you don't even know what half the things in it are, that's not whole food.
Yep.
That's processed food made by big food, our short name for, and I didn't know this a couple, 3 years ago. It came as in kind of a rude shock to me to understand that there were buildings full of people in New Jersey, by the way, Arlen, we talked earlier about this, who do nothing but engineer food for craveability. One of their favorite words. There are some others. They are in business to see that you truly cannot stop eating those chips or those cookies or whatever they are. It's an industry that is designed to keep you eating. Do they care about your health? No. Do they care about shareholder value? Yes. Are you being an idiot eating the crappy food that is making them rich and making you unhealthy? Yes, you are. I don't want you eating that food anymore. Yeah. It's wrong.
Yeah, so true. And yeah, like you said before about sugar as well, that all of these things interfere with our hormones through the gut, through your gut microbiome. Yes. And what you're eating is going to change the makeup of that microbiome. And that, unfortunately, the bad critters, when they get into a position of power and they want to keep growing and outnumbering the good critters in your gut, then they send messages to your brain saying, eat more sugar or eat more whatever is in these, nasty food-like substances. So,
and I'm glad you're bringing up the microbiome, because this is another thing that we've started paying so much more attention to in recent years. It's fascinating, actually. And a lot of people haven't received the news, don't understand that when you eat sugar, particularly, you are feeding the bad guys, to use your language. And in fact, if you want to grow cancer cells in your home lab, if you have one, what you feed them is sugar.
Yes.
That's what they like. That's what makes them grow. And why would you want to do that? If you know you have cancer, or if you don't want to have cancer, that's a thing you can do to improve your health, is to stop feeding your cancer the sugar that it craves.
Yeah.
Because the mitochondria thing, we are just learning about this whole fascinating microscopic world of our gut and how much power it has over our brain, over our whole system.
Yeah.
We are nothing but vehicles, in a way, for our microbiome. It's running the show. We are serving our gut. We are this creature carrying around these cells full of mitochondria who are doing something we don't even know what they're doing in there. It's fascinating, and I don't pretend to have a deep understanding of it, but I'm trying. I keep studying and reading because it's so interesting.
It is.
How, and taking it back to the kind of granny level, in a way, grannies have always known, right? That if you keep your belly happy, if you keep your innards feeling truly good, everything works. You know, everything works better. And especially if you start eating really carefully and eating whole food, plant-based, not too much, you feel so much better. You stop having pain in your belly, and you stop having acid reflux, you know, GERD, whatever. And you stop hopefully taking all those stupid medications that you have to take because of your acid reflux. Why not just get rid of the acid reflux? Why not just stop having it? Because so many of these things are strictly a result of what's going on in your microbiome because you're eating crap.
Yep. Yeah.
Processed food, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have more bacteria cells, or, you know, bacteria than we do human cells, or at least it's equivalent. There's varying things you hear about that. But yeah, we're, as you said, we're carrying around all these little critters, and they really control us. So it's super important what you're putting in your gut that is going to feed them or starve them and build up the good ones. And you will feel a million times better if that's what you're doing. And yeah, I just always love to say as well that food is the energy that we put in our bodies. Now, that seems obvious, but then so many people, you know, talk about how they feel tired, how they just don't feel great, they don't sleep well. And, you know, it's all, as you said, it's all connected. It's all one thing. And you've got to start paying attention to that. You cannot expect to feel great if the energy that you are literally putting into your body is crap.
And I don't know if we can say this about Australia. Maybe we can, but in the United States, everybody is feeding their Labrador retriever so carefully. They're buying the best food for Sparky. You know, they're giving him whatever he needs for his health. And then they're eating a hot dog.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's the same here. Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm glad for Sparky that they care and that they're feeding him carefully and thinking about his future and his energy. But how can you not have the deep understanding that you should take that care of yourself too?
Yeah.
And you know, I know a lot of people, there's a relationship, you feel deprived if you can't eat what you want when you want to eat it. But that can change if you make a decision. If you're able to just make that decision, a commitment, and give yourself a few weeks to adjust, then and let's talk about timing your food too, because, and I'm sure you're hearing about this, Arvin, a lot, the intermittent fasting idea. It's old, it's not fad. It's a very old way of thinking about food, really.
Yep.
And I like to compare, people talk about paleo, you know, and how did our ancestors eat? And we should eat the way our great, you know, grandparents ate. And well, think about it. They didn't eat 3 meals a day. They didn't eat all day. What did they eat? They ate when they could get food to a great extent. And they ate when grandma went out in the woods and foraged for mushrooms and herbs and so on. And maybe you pulled something out of the river. The guys didn't pull down a big creature for meat very often.
Yep.
You know, that was a once in a while kind of thing. They ate plants, a lot of plants. And they ate plants when they had plants. And they ate fruit in season.
That's right.
Which is a tricky thing now, because all of these things are in the grocery store all the time. You know, you can get grapes from Chile and apricots from Turkey and all these things. And so, especially if you are inclined, as I am, to have blood sugar issues, fruit, even whole fruit, can be a little bit of an issue, because you're not meant to have all kinds of fruit all year long.
Yep.
I think it does make sense to be somewhat careful to eat fruit that's in season for your microbes, for your microbiome. It seems happier when you do that.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And also getting back to what we've said a couple of times about the health of the planet, you know, having your grapes flown from, you know, somewhere
Right.
else in the world, that's not helping that either. So
No, it isn't.
absolutely eating local stuff that's local to you is going to help you and the planet. Yeah.
And the timing issue, and I've found in my own experience, and again, kind of relating it to diabetes and many of you out there who are having blood sugar issues, we were told to eat all the time. You know, that you should eat small meals all day. And that was the way to keep your blood sugar. And that's wrong. It's just not right. What really will control your blood sugar is to skip a meal frequently. And a lot of us have arrived at a place where we eat 1 or 2 meals a day.
Yep.
That's it. And so it's called timed eating or intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, whatever you want to call it. It's keeping your eating kind of confined to 6-8 hours, something like that. And the rest of the time, don't eat. Yeah. And if it sounds a little harsh, I promise you, it's not. You would be surprised. If you haven't tried this, when you do, you can drink tea, drink coffee, water, but don't eat particularly at night. Try and stop eating in the afternoon, 4, 5, 6, whatever you can manage to make your last meal. So for example, if your last meal is going to be at 6, then you want to kind of keep your eating from about noon till about 6 at night, in that period of 6 hours. In my case, I tend to eat earlier in the day. That's when I'm hungry. And so I'll eat a breakfast at 9 or 10, and then I'll eat a nice meal at 1 or 2, and I'm done. That's all I need. That's all I want. So I go to bed on an empty stomach and I go to sleep. And what happens is you sleep better. If you're having sleep issues, it's quite likely that it's because you're having food issues. And if you already know that you need to have a dark room and your electronics need to be turned off and you need to, you know, do some sort of sleep ritual. If you're having sleep problems, I'm willing to bet you've probably read some of those things and you might be trying to put those things in practice. But if you want to add this to your practice, it's going to improve your sleep. If you don't have food in your belly when you go to sleep, it's going to help you. And I love showing off my new favorite word, autophagy. Such a great word. Don't we love that word?
It is.
And it means that your body knows how to cleanse itself. The cells within your body have the ability to actually recycle other cells, dead, yucky pieces of cells. They recycle this stuff. But in order to do it, you need to let them have space and rest to do it. They have to not be busy digesting that pizza that you ate at 11 o'clock at night.
Yep.
You need to let your body rest. And then all the little cleaning things that need to happen go to work. And that's what keeps your body running well. That's what keeps you healthy into your old age, is if you've had this autophagy process working well for you, that it's like your closets, right? You gotta clean it out. You can't just let this stuff build up and ignore it. Your body has stuff in it that needs to be cleaned out, and not just in your digestive system and your gut, but all through your body. Your cells need to be cleaned and refreshed, and they know how to do it, and they will do it if you just leave them alone. If you just stop with a pizza at 11 o'clock at night, they will do it. So this was a fairly new concept to me in the last couple of years, and I find that interesting and exciting. And I want to be good to my cells, and I want you to be good to your cells, because each of these things that you add to your practice help.
Yeah.
They make you feel better.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And I think for people who that is a really brand new concept of time restricted eating, my suggestion would be to just gradually wind your eating window back, starting with, if you have breakfast currently at 8 o'clock, then can you push it out to 9 o'clock or whatever it is. But I do that as well myself. And it's not a problem. It's not that you can't fall asleep on an empty
easier than you
stomach.
think, isn't it?
It is easier than you
Yeah.
think. Yeah, absolutely. And you can do all the things you would normally do without eating. I'll go and do a big workout at the gym with, and I haven't eaten since, 7:30 the night before. And, it's not going to be till midday when I eat, and it's fine. I can do it. It doesn't affect my performance.
And we all are individual about this. So you need to find what works for you. And what, I'm a lark, right? I'm a morning person. And so that's when I want my energy, and the food makes sense for me and so on. But there are people who don't want to go to bed until midnight, 1, 2 a.m. And that's different. And you have to find what works for you. But the people that I've talked to about this, and a lot of the people that are teaching me about this, it's remarkable how easy it is. It's a habit, like so many other things. We have been in a habit of 3 meals a day, or 4 in some cases, the snack at 10 and the Starbucks at 4 in the afternoon with a donut and whatever. These things are habits. They are not necessarily must-do behavior.
And in fact, they're bad. They're don't do, really. Yeah, absolutely. So true.
And when you think about how our ancestors ate and what we're hardwired for is to survive not eating just fine.
Yeah, that's right.
We were not created to sit down to the table and eat 3 or 4 meals a day.
Yeah.
No.
So true. So we are just about out of time, Lynne, so we better talk a bit more about your book. Just tell us about that, whatever you want us to know, where we can get it. And
I have it right here, and I have it bookmarked for things that I keep looking at myself. It's a simple book, which is, I'm not a chef, I'm a grandma, and I think it's important for people to have really doable things, kind of go-to recipes that are forgiving, that are made out of the things that you have in your cupboard. And in the book, I talk about how to stock your cupboards and what to take out of them and get rid of, and what to have, because there are a few ingredients that when you have them in your kitchen, you go, well, I'll tell you about one of my secret sauces is truffle salt. It makes everything taste amazing. It's so good. It sounds a little expensive, a little pricey, but just a few sprinkles of this, and all of a sudden your eggs or whatever you're making, your vegetables, are like, wow. So I have some ideas there. But it's all designed to be super easy and fast for people to do, because I don't know, most of us really don't want to spend our day in the kitchen or even a couple of hours before a meal. I mean, I don't have that kind of patience. So it's made for people who maybe don't love to cook, but love to eat. That's the idea. And so, yes, there's pies, cakes, brownies, sweets, but there's also just regular meals that are the kinds of things that are a good strategy to have in your fridge. So you come in the door, and instead of going wrong, you will go into the fridge and pull this out and eat this thing. One of the things that comes to my mind is coleslaw. It's a great go-to food that works in all different kinds of ways. And it just gets better after a day or two in the fridge. And then it's there and you can just pull it out and eat it. It's so easy. And the recipes are designed for kids, 8 years old, or grandpa, 85, grumpy. He can do it too. It's simple. It's easy. You can get it on Amazon. It comes in paperback or hardback, or you can download it, but I really want you to have it on your sink in hardback if you can, on your countertop.
I agree.
So that you use it, because I didn't do this, right? So that you would just shove it up on the shelf. I want you to make the recipes and eat the food. And it's kind of a fun, but I tell some stories about things in it too. So there's that, and I hope you'll enjoy it. You're independent bookseller. If you go and ask for it, because yes, we want to support our booksellers. If you ask for it, they can get it from their wholesaler. Ingram Spark is the wholesaler that everybody buys there. One of the big wholesalers that everybody buys books from. So just ask for it and they'll order it for you and they can get it.
Yeah, totally second that. Let's support our local bookstores wherever we can, rather than giving Amazon more of our money.
Yes.
But yeah, if you, and probably I would say probably some of our other, we've got a local online, and I'm sure you have other online bookstores as well, which we have here. And the name's just gone. Booktopia. Booktopia is the one. Yeah, so I'm sure we could get it through there as well.
Yeah, so please ask for it wherever you want to buy books, and you can look on Amazon at the reviews and so on and see how people have received it. And my website is lynnebowman.com, LYNNEBOWMAN.com. I love hearing from people. I love getting questions from people. And there's a little contact form on the website that you can send me a note, and I will get it. I'm happy to get it. You can sign up there on my list if you want to. And I send out recipes when I come up with something I think, oh, this is amazing, I want everybody to know. I will send out more recipes. So you'll get stuff, not every week, because it's a lot of work, but you'll get it every once in a while. And
I think that's better, because we all get way too many emails.
We get way too much, but do send me pictures when you make something and you think, wow, look at this, came out amazing. I love getting pictures, because that proves to me that somebody out there actually used the recipe and is making their family and their own health better. I love that.
Right. And are you on social media, Lynn?
All of them, Instagram and Facebook and everything. And so if you go on the website, that's the easy way to find out. You can then click through to any of the other social media and see me on all those other platforms. YouTube channel, yes, too.
Yep. Okay. All right, great. Well, it's been really fun and really informative. I really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming on, and hopefully you get lots of book sales from Australia and the other places in the world where people are listening or watching this interview.
Well, I hope you'll enjoy the book, everybody.
Thanks, Lynn.